A nearly decade-long missing person investigation comes to a close, 8 years after a 17-year-old Texas boy disappears. But investigators now say the boy was only missing for 1 day back in 2015. Instead, they say he and his mother purposely misled police in their investigation for years.
Friends, family members, and concerned citizens breathed a collective sigh of relief on June the 29th, 2023, when a 25-year-old Houston man turned up more than 8 years after disappearing. After the astonishing revelation, Rudy Farias was quickly reunited with his mother, but the case took a bizarre twist when a number of dark, sinister, and surprising allegations began to emerge. Abuse, physical abuse, and even incest were common in the home Rudy shared with his mother before he reportedly went missing. But perhaps most surprising, evidence suggests that he never actually disappeared in the first place. So, what happened to Rudy over the 8 years? Just a quick disclaimer before we get into today's topic. This video discusses very sensitive topics that may upset and disturb some people. You have been warned. This is the horrific case of Rudy Farias. Rudolph Rudy Farias IV was born in Houston, Texas on October 1st, 1997. His father, Rudy Farias III, was an officer with the Houston Police Department, but he wasn't married to Rudy's mother, Janie Santana. He lived with his actual wife and their children on the other side of town, and Rudy lived with his mother. Nobody knew for sure what went on between Rudy and his mother behind closed doors, but neighbours noticed that he seemed fidgety, nervous, and downright scared when she was around. One went so far to say that he couldn't stand his mother. Some even suspected that they used drugs and had an inappropriate relationship. These rumours were never substantiated, but it was clear that Rudy did not have the greatest home life and that his emotional development stalled during his early teenage years. At 17 years old, he was 5'8" tall and weighed nearly 200 pounds, but in an interview with the New York Post, his cousin Michelle Rodriguez said that from a mental standpoint he never really progressed past the age of 10. Sadly, things got even worse in 2011, when his best friend and half-brother Charles died in a motorcycle accident. Rudy and his mother arrived at the scene whilst Charles was still alive, only to watch him die an agonising death a few minutes later. This obviously had a massive effect on Rudy, one that he never really recovered from. Tragedy struck once again 3 years later in 2014, when Rudy's 51-year-old father was fired from the police force for his role in a ticket rigging scandal in which he and his cohorts racked up hundreds and thousands of dollars in overtime for court appearances relating to the fraudulent tickets. Hours after being relieved from duty, Rudy's father was discovered by Houston police in a parking garage behind the city jail. He'd shot himself in the head while still wearing his uniform. Family members later stated that these two deaths were more than Rudy could bear, and from then on, his emotional state became even more fragile. On the evening of Friday, March the 6th, 2015, Rudy left his northwest Houston home to walk his two dogs. It's unclear exactly where they walked or what happened immediately after they left home, but Rudy was last seen near Tidwell and Park Drive at approximately 6:30 p.m, wearing blue jeans, brown shoes, grey gloves, and a dark t-shirt. Later that evening, one of Rudy's dogs returned home without Rudy. The other found its way back the following morning, but again, Rudy did not, so his mother called the police to report him missing when he failed to turn up. Local volunteers and search rescue personnel spent a rainy day scouring the neighbourhood, as well as adjacent fields and vacant lots, but by the evening, no trace of Rudy had been found. However, the police weren't necessarily expecting to find him, because they'd been skeptical of Janie Santana's story from the beginning. In fact, they didn't think Rudy disappeared at all. Nonetheless, hundreds of missing persons posters that included previously undisclosed information were hung on walls, windows, and telephone poles all over the city. The posters stated that Rudy had previously attempted suicide, that he was wary around strangers, and that he might be disorientated if he hadn't taken his medication. Authorities later reported that he had been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, but at the time, these revelations surprised many people who had been following the case. Rudy's whereabouts remain in question as the years passed, but his mother told a local reporter that she'd always thought the circumstances surrounding his disappearance were suspicious. At about the same time, an unidentified family member informed police that Rudy was living in the backyard of another relative's home. Police responded, but found no sign of Rudy or anyone else. During their investigation, police officers followed up various leads and collected evidence which seemed to prove that Rudy had actually been living with his mother ever since he had been reported missing. Additionally, in 2018, another cousin called Houston police to say that she'd seen him at his mother's home on more than one occasion. She also stated that her grandmother had not only seen Rudy, but had spoken to him numerous times while he was officially missing. Some neighbours also claimed to have seen Rudy coming and going from Janie Santana's home, but when they asked, she told them that it was one of her nephews named Dolph, who just so happened to look a lot like her missing son. But perhaps most surprisingly, Houston police officers may have interacted with Rudy and his mother during the investigation without even knowing it. This is because they were given fake names and dates of birth. Nonetheless, Rudy remained officially missing until June the 29th of 2023, when the unthinkable happened.
8 years after a Houston teen disappeared, he has now been found safe. Rudy Farias was 17 years old when he went out for a walk and didn't come home. Now he's 25 years old and back with his family. His mother told KPRC2 on the phone that some Good Samaritans found her son at a church.
Sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight on June the 29th, 2023, Rudy was discovered on the front steps of the Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church, approximately 8 miles from where he had went missing back in 2015. At the time, he was semi-conscious, uncommunicative, covered in cuts and bruises, and had dried blood in his hair. He was wearing a necklace that had once belonged to his half-brother Charles. The Good Samaritan who found him immediately called 911 and waited until the police and fire department arrived. However, the first responders later stated to a local ABC officiate that Rudy's mother Janie was already there by the time they arrived. Rudy declined to be taken to hospital for treatment, and since he was an adult, police and paramedics had little choice but to release him to the care of his mother. A few days later, Janie said Rudy was still not talking and often slept in the fetal position, but that she was thankful he was alive. After this, she released a photograph of him recuperating in a clean hospital bed, but again many people believe that this picture was taken years before he went missing. Less than a week after Rudy was found, he and his mother were summoned to a meeting at a local hotel with members of the Houston Police Department's Missing Persons Unit. Little is known about what transpired at the meeting, but when it was over, Janie Santana refused to answer questions from the reporters who gathered outside. Afterward, at the department's first official press conference, a police spokesman revealed that Rudy was never actually missing, that he had most likely returned home the day after disappearing, and that he had been living with his mother ever since. A few days later, Rudy had another meeting at the same hotel with a prominent and controversial community activist and leader of Houston's New Black Panther Nation named Quinal X. Quinal X said that Rudy's mother had initiated the meeting, but that she wasn't present when they met. During their conversation, Rudy apparently made a number of serious allegations against his mother that included drug use as well as mental, physical and sexual abuse, both before and during the 8 years he was officially missing. Janie Santana denied these allegations, and Quinal X never provided any evidence to the contrary. After the meeting, he told reporters that Rudy left home to get away from his mother but had returned 2 days later because he had no money and nowhere to go. His mother told him that they'd both get into trouble if the police found out what happened and forbade him to leave the home for nearly 8 years. Quinal X said that Rudy was a good kid who had been severely abused and mistreated, and what he really needed was psychological help and treatment. At another police department press conference, a spokesperson denied Quinal X's claims on the grounds that Rudy had never made any such statement. Rudy may have told the police one thing and Quinal X something entirely different. Whatever the case, Janie Santana told a local reporter that she expected to be arrested at any time. Rudy and his mother may have broken the law by giving officers fake IDs and personal information during their investigation, but more serious charges like incest, physical abuse, and drug use have never been proven. The district attorney declined to file charges, but left the door open to file them at a later date after the investigation was complete. Janie Santana may suffer from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a mental condition in which a person deceives others into believing that someone under their care is sick, injured, or mentally ill. But in some cases, a person suffering from the syndrome may claim that a loved one is missing when they are not. Either way, the motivations for such actions is usually to garner attention and sympathy. It's possible that Rudy's mother doesn't have this syndrome, and that greed may have been a real motivation behind the hoax. By some estimates, she got thousands of dollars in donations from sympathetic members of the public. Private investigator Brenda Paradise first got involved with the case a few days after the initial missing person report was filed. Shortly thereafter, she attended a fundraiser organised by concerned community members. She later stated that Janie Santana showed up a few hours after the fundraiser began, pocketed around $2,000, and left 30 minutes later. She also discovered that Janie Santana had created a GoFundMe page which claimed that Rudy had been diagnosed with cancer. Yet, Brenda Paradise found no evidence of such diagnosis, and she was never able to determine how much money was raised. The page then mysteriously disappeared when details of Rudy's case began to emerge. Later, his mother set up a second fundraiser with the goal of making $75,000 to help find her missing son. She apparently received another $2,000 before that page was taken down as well. In the end, Brenda Paradise may have summed it up best when she said, "I feel like we've been duped." She could be right, but another interesting aspect of the case that often gets overlooked is that some neighbours were surprised when Rudy was found, because according to them, they never even knew he was missing in the first place. One baffled neighbour even said that he frequently hung out with her and her family during the 8 years he was supposedly missing. She also said that he seemed like a happy and well-adjusted young man. Rudy and Janie Santana seem to have had a falling out shortly after he resurfaced. He does now live away from his mother and with a family friend, where all I can say is that I hope he's doing much better today and that he's on the road to recovery. I will also note that no charges have been filed, and the case remains ongoing. Let me know what you think about this case in the comments below. This is not an AI channel, I do all of this myself, the research, writing, editing, thumbnails, etc, and I upload every Thursday. So if you enjoy my work, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.